Tonight, we'll put an end to all of them. This order was given on July 16, 1918, against the family that had ruled Russia for 300 years and had no idea this order even existed. While upstairs, the family members spent the day exactly as they had the previous 78, prayers, a walk in the garden, an evening game of cards. Downstairs, people were already dividing up the family by name, who would shoot the 17-year-old girl who loved to gossip with the guards, who would shoot the man who had once ruled 1/6 of the earth, and who would shoot the little spaniel that the children loved so much. To truly understand how a 300-year-old dynasty came to an end in this way, let's go back 24 hours to the last ordinary morning this family ever had. 2 a.m., July 16, 24 hours remain, Yekaterinburg, Russia. The Ural Mountains, the border between Europe and Asia. The city sleeps, but nervously. This is the summer of 1918, and Russia is tearing itself apart in a civil war. Reds against whites, and the front line is moving toward this city fast. On a hillside stands a large white mansion that once belonged to a merchant named Ipatiev. The Bolsheviks confiscated it in the spring and gave it a new name. A name that sounds like it was written by a horror novelist, but is completely real. The House of Special Purpose. Look at it from the street and you understand everything without a single word. A double palisade of timber, taller than a man, so no one can see in. Windows painted over with lime. From the inside, the world is a white blur. Machine guns on the balcony and in the attic. Around 70 guards. Inside, on the second floor, sleep 11 people. 7 of them are the family that ruled Russia for 3 centuries. Nicholas Romanov, 50 years old. 14 months ago, he was Tsar Nicholas II, emperor and autocrat of all the Russias. Now the guards call him Citizen Romanov, a quiet, fatalistic man who fills his diary with notes about the weather. Alexandra, his wife, a German-born princess, granddaughter of Queen Victoria, proud, deeply religious, worn down by illness and by something heavier than illness, the knowledge that Russia blamed her for everything. Their 4 daughters, Olga, 22, Tatiana, 21, Maria, 19, Anastasia, just turned 17, grand duchesses who once danced at palace balls, now they wash their own linen and bake bread with the cook, and Alexei, 13 years old, the heir to a throne that no longer exists, a boy with hemophilia, a disease where a bruise can kill, who has spent recent weeks in bed after yet another internal bleed. He cannot walk. When the family moves anywhere, his father carries him. With them, Dr. Botkin, the family physician who refused to abandon them, the maid Anna Demidova, the cook Haritonov, the footman Trupp, 4 people who chose voluntarily to follow their former masters into captivity. They have been in this house for 78 days. And here's the question that hangs over this entire video. How does a family that ruled 180 million people end up prisoners in a merchant's house with painted windows? To understand the next 24 hours, you need 90 seconds of the previous 300 years. Stay with me, because the fall was faster than you think. 1613. After years of chaos, Russia's nobles offer the crown to a 16-year-old boy named Michael Romanov. His dynasty will build the largest land empire in human history. Peter the Great will drag Russia into Europe. Catherine will make it a superpower. By 1913, when the Romanovs celebrate 300 years on the throne, Nicholas II rules 1/6 of the Earth's land surface. And in 4 years, it's gone. The First World War bleeds Russia white. In February 1917, bread riots in the capital snowball into revolution. Nicholas's own generals tell him to abdicate. He gives up the throne for himself and for Alexei, signing away 3 centuries with a pencil in a train car, with roughly the emotion of a man cancelling a subscription. His diary entry that day complains of treason, cowardice and deceit all around. First they're held at their palace near the capital, then the moderate government ships them to Tobolsk in Siberia, comfortable, boring exile. The family actually adapts. Nicholas saws firewood for exercise. The girls put on little plays, they plant a garden. There's still talk of England taking them in. King George V is Nicholas's first cousin. They look so alike that people confuse them at weddings. England says no. The cousin, worried about revolution at home, quietly withdraws the offer. Remember that, when we get to the basement. Then, in October 1917, the Bolsheviks seize power, and everything hardens. In the spring of 1918, the family is moved to Yekaterinburg, the most fiercely revolutionary city in the Urals. into the House of Special Purpose. The name is not decoration. In Bolshevik documents, special purpose means exactly what you fear it means, and now the trap is closing from an unexpected direction. This July, anti-Bolshevik forces, the White Army, and a legion of Czechoslovak soldiers are advancing on Yekaterinburg. Within days, the city will fall. You'd think that's good news for the family. Liberation is coming. It's the opposite. It's their death sentence. Because the Bolsheviks now face a simple question: what happens if the Whites capture the Tsar alive? A living Romanov is a flag for every enemy of the revolution to rally around. Moscow and the local Ural Soviet have been exchanging coded telegrams about this exact question. Historians still argue about who gave the final order. Lenin's exact role is debated to this day, but what happens in this house in the next 24 hours is not improvised. It has been prepared for days. The family knows none of this. They can hear artillery in the distance, and in their diaries they sound almost hopeful. 8 hours remain. 8 in the morning. The family rises, as always. They gather, as always, for morning prayers. Psalms read aloud. Alexandra notes the day in her diary with the date and the weather. Tuesday, July 16th, a grey morning that clears up warm. Understand what daily life has shrunk to in this house. 2 walks in a small garden per day, half an hour each, was the ration until recently. Meals at fixed times, often shared with the guards' inspection. Windows that don't open, sealed and painted. Only after weeks of pleading, one single window was allowed open for air. The Empress and the girls sleep in one room, doors without locks. Guards can enter at any time. Early guard shifts stole from them, scribbled obscene drawings about the Empress in the bathroom, sang revolutionary songs under their windows. And yet routine. Breakfast, reading. The girls tidy their room themselves. Alexei plays in bed with a model ship. Karitonov, the cook, plans the meals. This is the 78th day of this rhythm, and there is no reason to believe day 79 will be different. But one man in the house is running on a different clock entirely. Yakov Yurovsky, 40 years old, a former watchmaker and photographer, now a hardened Bolshevik and commandant of the House of Special Purpose. He took over 2 weeks ago, replacing a commandant whose guards had grown too soft, too familiar with the family. Some guards had started chatting with the girls, even sneaking them books. Yurovsky ended all that. Polite, precise, cold. The family actually noted the change with cautious relief. The stealing stopped. Nicholas wrote in his diary that this new man was clearly decent. The decent man has spent the past several days scouting abandoned mine shafts in the forest outside the city. Today, Yurovsky's checklist is almost complete. He has selected the room, a semi-basement chamber with a barred window and plaster-on brick walls, chosen so bullets won't ricochet through wood into the house. He is assembling the execution squad and collecting revolvers. And he is waiting for one thing: final confirmation from Moscow by telegraph. 2 clocks are now running in the same house. The family's clock counts breakfast, walks, prayers. Yurovsky's counts down. 10:30 a.m., mid-morning. The family is allowed into the garden. Nicholas, a man of compulsive physical habit, walks his laps. The daughters take the air. Alexandra stays inside with Alexei. Her legs are bad. His knee is still healing and reads. In the distance, if the wind is right, you can hear it, a low grumble. Artillery, the front is close now, days away, maybe less. For the family, this sound is a coded message of hope. Liberation, coming closer with every thud. Here's the cruel geometry of their situation, and I want you to hold it in your mind for the rest of this video. Every kilometer the rescuers advance brings the family's death closer, not further. The approaching Whites are not the family's salvation. They are the deadline. Somewhere between Yekaterinburg and Moscow, the telegraph lines are busy. The local Ural Bolsheviks have essentially decided. Moscow's exact words remain one of history's arguments. The surviving documents are fragmentary, some possibly destroyed, and historians have fought about Lenin's fingerprints on this for a century. What we know, after this day, Moscow will be informed and will not object. For our story, the technicalities matter less than the fact. By this morning, the machine is in motion, and no one anywhere in Russia is trying to stop it. In the garden, Anastasia plays with the dogs. The family keeps 3 in the house. Her spaniel-loving little brother's favorite, a dog named Joy, trots around the yard. Remember Joy. Out of everyone we've met so far, Joy is one of the very few who will leave this story alive. 3 in the afternoon. And now the first visible crack in the ordinary day, the detail that in hindsight screams. There is a fifth child in this house, Leonid Sednev, 14 years old, the kitchen boy. He's Alexei's playmate, practically the only one the sick heir has. This afternoon, Yurovsky orders Leonid removed from the house. The official explanation given to the family: the boy is going to meet his uncle. His uncle had been taken from the house weeks earlier, and though no one in the family knows it, is already dead. The family doesn't buy the story. Something about it lands wrong. Alexandra records the strange removal of the boy in her diary and wonders whether it's true. Alexei is upset, his one friend, gone without warning. Dr. Botkin had recently been writing an unfinished letter describing their captivity with the weary line that he was, in effect, already dead to the world he'd known. Why remove the kitchen boy? Because Yurovsky's list is exact. 11 people are to die tonight, the 7 Romanovs and the 4 retainers who share their captivity as adults by their own choice. A 14-year-old servant boy is not on the list. In the grim arithmetic of this operation, removing Leonid is the closest thing to mercy anyone will show today. Leonid Sednev will survive. Decades later, the little kitchen boy's removal remains the single loudest alarm bell of July 16th, and the family, though unsettled, cannot possibly read it correctly. They've had 78 days of strange orders. This is just one more. While the family wonders about the kitchen boy, Yurovsky is downstairs solving a technical problem. He needs shooters. He gathers the squad, around 10 men, drawn from the guard. The exact roster is still debated, and later, far more men would claim to have been in that room than could have physically fit in it. Revolvers are collected and distributed. Assignments are made. Each shooter is told which prisoner to aim at, so that it will be quick. And here something happens that Soviet textbooks never mentioned. Some of the men refuse. According to Yurovsky's own later account, a couple of the guards, when they understood the daughters were to be shot too, said they would not fire at the girls. Yurovsky doesn't argue, he simply swaps them out. Even in a squad of hardened revolutionaries, shooting 4 young women and a sick child requires casting. Let that sink in. At 3 in the afternoon upstairs, those same girls are reading and sewing. Downstairs, men are being interviewed essentially for the job of killing them. 6 hours remain. Evening. Supper, as always, at 8. Whatever Haratonov could make, captivity food, plain and repetitive. Around the table, the family and the 4 retainers, together, as they have been every evening. Dr. Botkin will later be found to have left his glasses and his unfinished letter in his room, expecting, like everyone, an ordinary tomorrow. After supper, the most heartbreakingly normal scene of the entire day. Nicholas and his daughters play cards. Alexandra and Nicholas play bezique, their nightly ritual, a card game for 2 they've played together for decades, through coronations, war, revolution, and now through captivity. She records it in her diary, the way she has 1,000 times. That diary entry, noting the evening of cards and lights out at 10:30, is the last thing Alexandra Romanova will ever write. Nicholas's own diary had already gone quiet 3 days earlier. Its final pages worry about Alexei's health and note, with a prisoner's flat irony, that they had no news from outside. 10:30 p.m., the family goes to bed, the 4 girls in their shared room. They sleep on camp cots, army style, a hardening habit from their palace childhood that turned out to be prophetic. Alexei in his parents' room. Prayers said. Lights out. Every single one of them falls asleep believing in tomorrow, and I keep coming back to this. There is no scene of farewell in this story. No last meaningful glances, no gathered family saying the things people say at the end. History denied them an ending, because the whole design of this night is that they must not know it's an ending. Downstairs, Yurovsky has one problem left, and it's absurdly mundane. The truck is late. The plan requires a truck, a Fiat lorry for 2 jobs. First, its engine left running is supposed to mask the sound of gunfire from the street. Second, it will carry the bodies to the forest. The truck was ordered for midnight. Midnight comes, no truck. The most meticulously prepared murder in Russian history is now waiting on logistics, the eternal, universal, immortal late delivery. Yurovsky, the former watchmaker, watches the minutes he cannot control tick by. Every hour of delay pushes the operation closer to summer dawn, and dawn means witnesses. Upstairs, 11 people sleep. 1:30 a.m., July 17, 1:30 in the morning. The truck has finally arrived. Yurovsky goes upstairs and wakes Dr. Botkin. The doctor is the family's intermediary, the adult they trust. The story Yurovsky tells is smooth, plausible, and constructed like a lockpick. The city is unquiet. The front is close. There may be shooting in the streets. For the family's own safety, they must be moved downstairs. Please dress and prepare. Think about the genius and the horror of this lie. It uses the family's own hope as the mechanism. The front is close. They know that. They've heard the guns. They've prayed for it. Of course there's danger. Of course they should move. The lie works because it's 90% true. The family takes about 40 minutes. They dress properly. This matters. The daughters put on their traveling clothes, the corsets, the ones with over 1 kilogram of diamonds, pearls and gems sewn inside, hidden since Tobolsk against the day of escape or ransom. They dress for a journey, for a rescue, maybe for liberation. They are, without knowing it, putting on armor. Around 2 a.m., the procession comes down the stairs. No one cries. No one suspects. Yurovsky will later note, almost with surprise, how calm they were. Nicholas carries Alexei. The boy still can't walk. Alexandra follows. The 4 daughters, Anastasia carries her little dog. Behind them, Dr. Botkin, the cook, the footman, and the maid Demidova, clutching that pillow with the jewel box inside. Down the stairs, across the courtyard, into the semi-basement room. 5 meters by 6. 1 barred window, bare wallpapered walls. The room is empty. Alexandra asks, "What? No chairs. May we not sit? 2 chairs are brought, 1 for her, 1 for Alexei. The rest stand." Yurovsky arranges them, a row against the wall, as if for a photograph. He even tells them something to that effect. People in the city are saying they've escaped, so a photograph may be needed to prove they're here. 11 people arrange themselves against the wall. The former watchmaker looks at his composition and leaves the room to fetch the others. For one last minute, the Romanovs stand quietly in a basement, believing they are waiting for a car. 2:15 a.m., 0 hour. I'm going to tell you what happened in that room, because history should be told honestly. But we'll keep the door closed. What matters is not the gore, it's the facts, because the facts are what killed a dynasty. Yurovsky returns with the squad. The room is so small that the shooters crowd in the doorway, nearly a dozen men packed shoulder to shoulder. He takes out a paper and reads a short decree. In view of the fact that their relatives are attacking Soviet Russia, the Ural Soviet has sentenced them to be shot. Nicholas doesn't understand. He turns toward his family, turns back, and manages only a bewildered, "What? What?" Yurovsky repeats the sentence, and the shooting begins. The plan was for it to take seconds. It takes around 20 minutes and becomes chaos, for a reason no one could have foreseen: the diamonds. The bullets aimed at the daughters' chests strike the jewels sewn into their corsets and stop or ricochet around the small room, filling it with smoke, plaster dust, and screaming. The shooters, half blind in the smoke, cannot understand why the girls won't fall. The maid Demidova shields herself with the pillow. The jewel box inside it stops bullets too. What follows when the guns fail is done with bayonets, and it is the part of this story I will not describe. The last to die, by most accounts, were among the youngest. The family treasure sewn in for salvation produced only 20 extra minutes of horror. If you're looking for a single image of what happened to Russia in these years, there it is. By roughly 2:35 a.m., it is over. 304 years of the Romanov dynasty, 20 czars and emperors, the largest empire on earth, ended in a basement measuring 5 by 6 meters by a squad commanded by a watchmaker. Anastasia's little dog was killed in that room too. Alexei's spaniel, Joy, left upstairs, survived the night. A guard took him in. Later, a British officer carried the dog out of Russia, and Joy lived out his days near Windsor. Of everyone who slept in the family's rooms on the night of July 16th, the dog was the only one who ever reached England, the country whose king, their cousin, had declined to save them. Doan, Julie 17, and the 100-year Epilogue. The clock has run out, but the story hasn't, because what happens next is why this night haunted the entire 20th century. The truck carries the bodies to the forest, to an abandoned mine called Ganina Yama, and here the meticulous operation collapses into black farce. The truck breaks down, the mine turns out to be too shallow, the secret site has witnesses, local peasants within hours. Yurovsky, in a panic, spends a full day reburying his secret. Sulfuric acid, fire, a second burial site under railway sleepers on a forest road called Epilogue. Two of the children are buried separately from the others, a detail that will detonate a mystery 70 years long. And when the squad stripped the bodies, the corsets gave up their secret, the diamonds spilled out, and Yurovsky had to fight his own men to keep them from looting the dead. 8 days later, the White Army takes Yekaterinburg. They find the house of special purpose scrubbed, the basement room with its walls shot to pieces and washed floors. They launch an investigation, but they find no bodies. And that absence gives birth to one of the great myths of the 20th century. Because the Bolsheviks officially admit only Nicholas's death for years, the fate of the wife and children is wrapped in silence and lies. No bodies, no confirmation, and so the world begins to hope. Rumors bloom, someone survived, a daughter, the youngest. In 1920, a young woman is pulled from a canal in Berlin. She refuses to give a name. Later, she claims she is Anastasia, survived the basement, smuggled out by a soldier. She knows details. Some relatives believe her, others swear she's a fraud. As Anna Anderson, she becomes the most famous claimed survivor in history. Court cases run for decades. Hollywood makes films. The myth of the escaped princess becomes immortal. Dozens of other claimed Anastasius, Alexius, Marius surface around the world. The truth waits in a forest, under railway sleepers, for 70 years. 1991. The Soviet Union is collapsing, and the main grave at Epilogue is officially excavated. 9 skeletons, DNA analysis, using blood samples from living relatives, including Britain's Prince Philip, a grandnephew of the Empress, identifies the Tsar, the Empress, 3 daughters, and the 4 retainers. But 2 children are missing from the grave, Alexei and one of the sisters. The Anastasia myth roars back to life. Then, in 2007, amateur searchers find a second, smaller burial site nearby, burned fragments. DNA testing confirms Alexei and the last sister. The circle closes after 89 years. Every person who stood in that basement is accounted for. No one escaped. Anna Anderson, tested posthumously through a preserved tissue sample, was not a Romanov. And one more turn that no one in 1918 could have imagined. In 2000, the Russian Orthodox Church canonized Nicholas, Alexandra and their 5 children as saints. The Ipatiev house itself no longer exists. Soviet authorities demolished it in the 1970s, precisely because people kept coming. On its site today stands a cathedral. The church on the blood, Ganina Yama, the failed secret grave, is now a monastery. The places chosen to erase this family became the places where they are remembered most. Let's rewind the 24 hours one last time, because now you can see what nobody in that house could. Morning prayers, 18 hours left. The garden walk under the sound of liberating artillery, the guns that were actually the countdown. The kitchen boy sent to a non-existent uncle, the one alarm that couldn't be read. The evening game of Bezique, a wife's last diary line. Lights out at 10:30, everyone asleep, believing in tomorrow. The lie about safety at 1:30. The chairs, the pillow, the photograph that was never going to be taken. A dynasty of 300 years didn't fall on a battlefield or a scaffold before a roaring crowd. The way empires are supposed to end. It ended in a rented basement on a Tuesday night, waiting for a car, killed by men terrified not of its power, but of its survival. And maybe that's the real lesson of the last 24 hours of the Romanovs. History's biggest endings don't announce themselves. They look like a knock on the door, a plausible explanation, and a request to please wait downstairs. The Romanovs waited politely. If this story held you to the end, the like button and a comment genuinely decide whether the algorithm shows it to anyone else, and tell me whose last 24 hours you want next. Rasputin, the man this family trusted, who died 6 ways in one night. Or Escobar, who went from $7 billion to a rooftop. Subscribe. The clock is already running on the next one.